All right. Hey, InfoSec addicts. How you guys doing? Joe McCray here. Let's get ourselves started, okay? Okay, guys. So what we want to get focused on now is the basics of Linux. Linux plus security plus GPN and CEH. I think that's what it is, right? If we look at the basics of the exam breaks down into a couple of areas. Okay, so here's the key thing. The Linux exam for Linux Plus used to be from split between both CompTIA, the company that makes Security Plus and Network Plus and A Plus, and they had Linux Plus. There was another company called LPI, Linux Professional Institute. Well, a few years ago, they actually merged, at least from the perspective of the exam. So what a lot of people don't know is the LPI cert was 2 exams as opposed to the Linux Plus was 1. So when I did mine way back in the Stone Ages, it was only 1 exam. And quite frankly, it was actually a lot easier. Since they've switched to where they've merged between the Linux Plus material and the LPI material, which has now been upgraded to exam numbers 103 and 104, the exam is significantly more difficult. Definitely not something you can't handle. You can handle it. I found the test to be, medium, above average in difficulty. If you're a real Linux user, you can pretty much cruise through it. If you're a power user, right, someone who really can build your own systems, you're comfortable building servers, then yeah, Linux Plus won't be that hard because it's designed for a person who's kind of at the entry of building servers. They're not a hardcore sysadmin doing really complex server stuff. That's what I would say. Linux Plus is for someone who is just beyond a Linux user. So you're getting to the point where you're really starting to do some stuff. You're not ninja, but you're starting to build some servers and stuff, right? Okay, so what we want to say is it focuses on, can you work at the command line a little bit beyond the user? Can you do system configuration stuff? Can you read system configuration files? And where are these system configuration files going to be? Usually they're in the Etsy directory, right? It's a lot of directory location based questions, so it's not that bad. It's doable. Okay, can you perform really simple maintenance type stuff, starting, stopping services and things like that? I think you'll find that stuff to be fairly easy to do if you're a Linux sysadmin. If you're not a Linux sysadmin, then bro, you're gonna have to build some servers. I know people don't want to do it. They want to play around in VMware, but you've got to build servers. I really think the Linux Perfect Server from How to Forge is the best way to train somebody in building servers. I think they're pretty complex servers with a lot going on. You get those suckers built and you take the time to research what each server that you're building is, you'll get a lot of value out of it. So if you look at the domains now, if you look at the content, the way it's broken down now, this is LX0103. LX0103. So the difference is going to be how well we go over Linux architecture, how well you go over using installation utilities like yum and apt, how well you go over, do you know your basic GNU commands? GNU is glad it's not Unix, right? Do you know your basic GNU commands? If you know those basic GNU commands, your ifconfig, your pwd, do you know that stuff? Do you know your find command and your ls command and grep and all that kind of stuff. Do you know redirection, piping and outputting stuff from one file to another? If you know that kind of stuff, you're going to be fine. Okay. Devices, file systems, file system hierarchy. Yeah, are you comfortable with your Etsy FS tab? FS tab is file system table. Like, are you comfortable with that? Are you comfortable with your M tab? Do you know what setting those parameters in those files actually looks like? Do you know that kind of stuff? If you know that kind of stuff, you'll be fine. Does it go like super crazy deep into stuff that's in the dev directory? The answer is no, it doesn't. It's not that bad. It's definitely a tough test, but it's not so difficult that you can't handle it. Okay, so we're jumping down here into the things that they're talking about. Can you enable and disable peripherals? Can you enable and disable CD-ROM drive? Can you enable and disable a printer? Can you figure out what type of mass storage device you have connected to a machine? How do you figure out information about your hardware? LS-USB, LS-PCI, list USB devices, list PCI devices, right? Do you know that kind of stuff? Do you know about /sys/proc/dev, mod probe? How comfortable are you with those types of commands? Now, again, guys, a lot of this stuff is pretty old, and you can make the argument you just don't do as much of this kind of stuff anymore. And you really don't. A lot of cases we spin up the server and we get to drive and we just kind of expect it to work. But when it's broke, oh, we're going to find out how much you know about Linux that day. I always tell everybody, all these operating systems, you really learn them when they break, right? So when you start learning to use dmessage, like you see right here, how it's got dmessage, oh, you're going to learn it when some stuff is broke. Init, that kind of stuff, what initializes. When you break services, you're going to learn about init then, because it's how do you initialize stuff to run, right? Changing run levels. Do you have stuff that runs at reboot? Do you have stuff that runs reboot with no graphical user interface, no GUI? Reboot with a full-blown graphical interface? We call those run levels, right? Then you also have things like, okay, what's your Etsy init tab, right? Which is your initialization init tab table, okay? And then you've got other things like what's system control, right? System CTL, system control. That's how we control services in a modern Linux machine. So yeah, that's definitely something that you'd want to know. You'd want to be like, yeah, I can use it. Now, again, do you have to be a hardcore admin for this exam? The answer is no. Package management and installation. So do you know stuff like how to use fdisk? Do you know how to mount something to your file system? So when you attach something to your file system, we call that mounting the file system. So let's say you have a Linux machine, you want to plug in a USB drive. You don't plug in a USB drive, you mount the USB drive, or you mount the CD-ROM. If you attach an external CD-ROM, you mount the CD-ROM. So that's what's going on with that. You can install a boot manager. You're definitely going to need to know the difference between Grub and Lilo. Grub and Lilo. Grub and Lilo are your two bootloaders. Gonna need to know how to manage Grub. Gonna need to know how to deal with your grub.conf file and mess with that so that you can get stuff to boot. Now, I wouldn't say that you have to be hardcore, but you definitely need to know, like, what's the file, what's the difference between Lilo and Grub. Definitely how to manage libraries, right? LDD, LDconfig. These are libraries. When you install software, in Windows, we're used to dynamic link libraries. Now, in Linux, they're not DLLs, they're .so files, shared objects. So these shared object files are how you add additional functionality to a program, add resources to a program. I mean programming resources, not like RAM and CPU. So when you have that kind of stuff, that's how you can figure out, that's how you really make programs work, quite frankly. So a lot of times when stuff is broken, it's not pointing at the correct library, or you don't have that library installed. So these are the kinds of things that really break a lot of things. So you've got to know how to load shared libraries, how to update your library environment vulnerability. I mean, variables like LD library path. You've got to know how to manipulate stuff like that. Now, if you've got things like your Debian app-based system, these updating systems that allow you to update your machine usually have repositories that they pull from. Now, in these cases, this exam is really kind of focused on internet-based repositories, where you're going to run your own repository. You are not running your own repository. You are connecting to a repository out on the internet and pulling this stuff down. So if you want to install some software, this allows you to just connect to the web, install the software, and all the dependencies that make the software work, that's all handled by your repositories. So the application that you want to install is going to have a list of dependencies that it requires. So your package manager will go out, grab all those dependencies, pull all those down, build the dependencies, and then build the actual application. Okay. Now you've got the Debian-based, which is apt, and then you've got the Red Hat-based, which is yum. They're definitely going to make sure that you know DKPG, the Debian package management system. Apt is the automated way of doing it, apt and aptitude. DKPG is for doing it at a command line, managing individual installation package files. Yum is the automated way of doing it in Red Hat. RPM, Red Hat Package Manager, is how you do it from a command line in Linux, Red Hat-based systems, right? So your Debian-based stuff is going to be Debian, Ubuntu, Mint. Your Red Hat-based stuff is going to be like Fedora, CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Okay, do you know your Linux GNU-based commands? Echo, env, pwd, set, unset, uname, history. Do you know those types of commands? And if you feel comfortable with those types of commands, how good are you with your things like cat and cut and expand, head and tail? How good are you with those types of commands? And remember, this is just a partial list. So what they really want to know is, like, can you drive a Linux box? Now, not are you a ninja, but are you a real user, really leaning toward a power user? And that's really what they're trying to ask. That's why they want to see you use things like sed, sort, split. They want you to use stuff like that, unique, and WC for like word count, right? Can you handle like copying files and a lot of redirection? Now, some of those actual redirection questions are kind of tricky. Okay, streams, pipes, like I said, redirection, being able to manage arguments, right? Here's a good one. Process management. Can you start, stop, kill processes? Absolutely a tough pain in the butt, right? So can you background stuff, foreground stuff? Can you list the process tree? All these types of things, definitely covered. Okay. Can you do process management and process prioritization? That's why you have things like nice and re-nice to raise or lower the priority of this process in the CPU. A little bit of regular expressions, grep, egrep, fgrep, sed. Grep is like pattern searching. Like I want to look for something in grep to see, just this particular bit of data. Egrep is extended grep. Sed is your stream editor, but the best way I would say look at sed is like find and replace. Find and replace. A regex is just a pattern that you have to look for. Okay. Do you know your VI commands? You're definitely going to be hit with VI commands, right? So you should know your VI commands, DD, ZZ, YY, all those. At the end of the day, the rationale behind it is there's no Linux or Unix-based system in the world that you can ever log on to that does not have VI. So you should know how to use VI. A lot of the newer kids today use something called Nano. Okay, and then the last thing that you've got to know is how to manage partitions in the file system and stuff like that. Remember how I talked about fdisk, gdisk, right? MKFS. So things like DU disk utilization and DF disk free, right? And FSCK file system check, right? So these are things that you're going to be doing to try to make sure you understand the file system, how much space you have on the file system, formatting the file system to all the different file system types. All right, got to be able to manage permissions. Bro, they're going to beat you up. You better know your permissions. You better know chmod and umask and shown and chgroup. Okay, got to know the difference between hard and soft links. Got to be able to delete them, add them, create them. Definitely got to be able to find stuff on your file system. Woo, that was a lot, huh?